This is Newsroom. Hello and welcome from Johannesburg here in South Africa. I'm Evan Jansen. This show, of course, live, as always, broadcast from our studio here in Auckland Park. We also stream live on YouTube. That's now. Later, you can watch it back on demand on our YouTube channel if you've missed it. Not today. Well, we'll get an update from the African Union shortly on the escalating situation in Burundi as the nation awaits election results. We'll get an update on the taxi protests in the capital. There's an update on the Youth BRICS Summit and etolls as the new dispensation goes live today. We also look at declining freedom in Egypt and close with a National Arts Festival in Grahamstown. But first, here's a look at the day's news with Anine.
Good morning, I'm Anine Dormal, and let's take a look at the stories making headlines today. Commuters around Mamelodi and Pretoria have been left stranded again this morning. This as taxi operators continue to prevent Autotext buses from taking over routes previously occupied by Putco. Buses were earlier stoned as they were prevented from ferrying commuters. A strong police presence helped bring the situation under control. To give us the latest, our SABC reporter, Ofense Timo, joins us on the line. Ofense, what is the latest?
The situation remains tense but very calm. There's a bus which was pelted with stones standing outside the bus depot. There were some barricades on the roads when people were pelting stones, but the cops have cleared the road right now. The police have actually cleared the road right now. There were reports that the CEO of Autotext, which is the new bus operator in the area which has replaced Putco, will be coming here to come assess the situation and also sort of brief the media about the outcome of a meeting that they had yesterday with the taxi operators. There was an impression that, the situation was temporarily resolved following the meeting yesterday, but as things transpired this morning, it came out that some taxi operators were actually not happy with the buses operating without their demands not being resolved. What happened though this morning is that some buses have actually left the depot. 19 of them actually left the depot to go operate, but then shortly afterwards there were some incidents of intimidation where they were pelted with stones, roads were barricaded, and then that's when the police actually called reinforcement. And the people, bystanders, whom we are not sure if they were taxi operators standing outside here, they have all feared as police started to increase in numbers. We've also spoken to the commuters who you can sense some sort of animosity and frustration, especially towards the taxi operators. Most of the commuters are actually saying that the taxi operators are not fighting with government, but they are fighting with the commuters themselves as they are actually preventing them from going to work to go feed their kids. So they've now threatened that they might take matters into their own hands as they are actually not satisfied by the service that's been rendered by the police, where they could actually blockade the taxi ranks and prevent the taxi operators from coming to do like a intimidation here outside the bus depot. So the commuters have actually threatened that if this continues, because it's actually threatening their livelihood, then they would actually have to take matters into their own hands, barricade roads, prevent taxi operators from working as well, because they say it's actually unfair that they're being prevented from going to work while the taxi operators are actually doing their work and making their money. So they're saying they will definitely take matters into their own hands. As things stand, we're still trying to inquire from the municipality and all the other stakeholders that took part in the meeting last night to try and find out an amicable solution for the impasse. As it seems, the impression was that the matter was resolved following a meeting with the taxi operators, but it's not the case after what transpired this morning.
The first two major changes to the multi-billion rand Gauteng e-tolling system have taken effect. Earlier this year, Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa announced the new e-toll dispensation after years of court cases and a provincial review of the project. From today, merchants will be charged regardless of whether they have e-tags or not. The South African Revenue Service says its target for 2015 is 1 trillion rand. According to its records, nearly 30,000 taxpayers have submitted their returns through e-filing since the start of the season at midnight. At least 7,300 others have visited SARS branches and mobile tax units throughout the country. The deadline for manual submissions is September the 30th and November the 27th for e-filing. Lesotho's volatile political situation is now in the hands of an extraordinary regional heads of state summit. The meeting will take place tomorrow. It follows the conclusion of a fact-finding visit to the Mountain Kingdom by SADC mediator and Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa.
Nearly everyone that we met is deeply worried and concerned about his death. And it is this that has prompted the leaders in the region to call a summit of the double troika.
And tensions continue to rise in Burundi as parliamentary poll results are expected to be released today. Yesterday, at least 6 people were killed in the country's capital. This was the latest violent clash between police and residents since Monday's election. Since April, Burundi has been locked in its worst political crisis since its civil war ended a decade ago, with protests erupting against President Pierre Nkurunziza's bid to seek a third term in office. Well, remember, you can find all of those stories on our Newsroom Facebook page. Just search for SABC Newsroom. You can also follow us on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Given, over to you.
Thank you very much, Anina. We start with the situation in Burundi this morning, as President Pierre Nkurunziza has claimed an early election victory for his party in the country's parliamentary poll that was boycotted by 17 opposition groups. The African Union has not observed the elections. Voting has been marked by grenade attacks and sporadic gunfire, but Burundi's election commission has claimed an enormous turnout, despite reports saying there were many polling stations that remained very quiet. The poll followed weeks of violence and a failed coup attempt sparked by Nkurunziza's defiant bid for a third term. Now, to talk to us about this, we are joined on Skype from Ethiopia by African Union Commission spokesperson Jacob Ino Eben. A very good morning to you, sir, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Great pleasure joining you.
How does the African Union view the election that has just taken place in Burundi?
Well, as you already rightly stated, the elections held on the 29th of June, and these elections were not observed by the African Union. So it would be very difficult for us to say how the elections went. But we know the elections held in spite of calls by the stakeholders in Burundi, the political parties, civil society organizations, as well as the international community, including the East Africa community, the African Union, the United Nations, and other critical stakeholders. But the elections, as we know, were organized and they took place, but we are unable to ascertain how the elections went.
If Pierre Nkurunziza returns to power, he's already claimed an early victory, as you might have seen in reports that's coming out. How will this affect the AU's relationship with the nation Burundi?
Well, the Burundi, as you know, is a member of the African Union and will remain a member of the African Union. So no matter the challenges that any member state is following, the African Union is always going to stand by its side. But of course, making sure that provisions of the normative frameworks that have been agreed, consensually agreed by all other member states, are implemented to the point where we are able to maintain peace and security within our continent and to provide a space for development to take place.
I know that you're not observing the election in Burundi, but I'm sure that you have a keen interest. Do you have any idea when the final results of this election, some observers are calling it a sham election, when it is expected?
Of course, the African Union has a very keen interest in Burundi. As you know, just reflecting over a period of decades, two decades ago when Burundi had the challenges that it had, the African Union has worked side on side with the Burundian people to be able to have this sort of peace and stability we have today. And so the stakes that the African Union have in Burundi is as high as that which the Burundians themselves uphold of their country. And the Burundians have put in so much to get to where they are, and it will be very sad to see a regression to a situation as the one we had in the 1990s or the early 2000s when the Arusha Peace Agreement was signed. So peace and security is a principal concern of the Burundians as it is of the African Union. And so that is the issue that the African Union is really following with close attention.
Do you have any, can you give us, we've got conflicting reports coming in about the levels of violence in the country, the levels of violence that have surrounded this election. Can you give us an update? Some say 6 people have been shot. I read elsewhere up to 20, 25 people killed on the outskirts of Bujumbura. Do you have any idea around the levels of violence that we've seen around the election?
Indeed, as you have been following, we equally from Addis Ababa as well as our office in Bujumbura, we have been following the escalation of violence, and that's why the chairperson of the African Union Commission has reiterated her call for the authorities, those in government and those in the opposition as well as civil society and other stakeholders, to exercise maximum restraint as they demonstrate, as they try to manifest their in whatever they would like to express. It is very important that the sort of violence that we see escalating today really be arrested. We don't have any exact number as to the people who have lost their lives. It's very unfortunate. Our condolences to the bereaved families and those who are suffering from injuries that may they recover very, very quickly, but also that it really saddens the African Union, as even Burundi celebrated its anniversary yesterday, and we heard reports of people still being killed on an Independence Day when, in a normal circumstance, people are supposed to be celebrating and rejoicing and just looking at the sort of progress the country has made and how to continue reflecting on building further on their development efforts.
Well, thank you very much for joining us today. That's the African Union Commission spokesperson, Jacob Ino-Eben. He's speaking to us from Addis Ababa this morning. That's in Ethiopia, about the escalating situation around the elections in Burundi. We'll keep you updated. They're escalating, or conflicting reports, rather, of how many 6 people, including a policeman, are said to have been killed when protesters clashed with security forces in a neighborhood southeast of the capital, Bujumbura. Others claim up to 30 people dead. But let's have a look at what's been going on social media with regards to it. Some of the views that have been coming in. Give Munzora says developments in Burundi clearly attest to how the politicians can hold on to power at all costs. Never mind the IPDs, the wounded, etc. Eric Kingsepo says, it's ironic because it's the people who support Burundi government that are allowed to speak. Those who oppose are threatened into silence. Then Claude says, when snipers are used to kill police and civilians to cause chaos in Burundi, we, the silent majority, say no to violence. Natunde says, my soul is tired and weary. When will Burundi truly see peace? When will her children live up to the full potential they're capable of? Sad face there. There you have a picture. Thierry Uwamahoro says, when they woke up this morning, these 2 little angels had a father. Tonight, they're orphans. Burundi massacre, the hashtag there. It is an escalating situation. Today's pick of the day, well, it's that pick, that another one from Thierry Uwamahoro. Captioned, hashtag Burundi, police raid. Up to 20 people killed in Buja. An entire family decimated. July 1, 2015. That is our pick of the day. And we also look at a tweet of the day that comes from Sandrina Nduwimana saying, yesterday's killings left me speechless. Father in heaven, hear our cries, see our desperation. We are torn and tired. Hashtag Burundi crisis. As I say, conflicting reports of what's happening in that country. We'll keep you updated on this very channel around the election, the outcomes there, and how the situation escalates in the hours and days to come. Back here in South Africa, after months of motorists opposing the etoll tariffs, travellers will today be able to feel some relief as the first part of the new reduced etoll fees come into effect. The dispensation is set to benefit non-registered and non-e-tag users, as well as a decrease in monthly caps for registered users. Despite the adjustments, there are still organisations, opposition parties and unions who are opposing the changes. But SANRAL's CEO, Nasir Ali, said earlier this week that if you can't afford the fees, you should simply move. Joining us today, well, in our Pretoria studio, is SANRAL's communication manager, Mr. Vusi Mona. A very good morning to you, Mr. Mona. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, and thank you for having us.
You've made the adjustments now after months. Do you think that the etoll system will still be faced with a lot of hostility, as we're seeing? You can hear me, sir?
Well, yes, I did hear the first part of your question.
Yes, just your reaction. Do you think
it will be faced with hostility?
Correct.
Look, we have been monitoring, public reaction to the announcement that was made by the Deputy President. We've been looking at the tonality and the discourse in general. We are of the view that the debate is moving from a situation where people were saying we will not pay to one that says where should we pay and how do we pay. So it is our view that motorists are seeing and welcoming the concessions that have been made by government. So we are positive that motorists will embrace the new dispensation.
How do you view organizations, unions, and even opposition parties that are calling on people to not pay, to not follow the system?
Well, it's very unfortunate that we still have people who are firmly entrenched in their position. It's also unfortunate that what is purely an infrastructural matter has been turned into a political football of sorts. Those who are still opposed to the system are very vocal, but it is our view that they are in the minority. The likes of Auta and the DA have become ideologues around this issue. And I say so because, ideologues hold on to a position even when the facts point to the contrary. Government has moved its position. SANRAL has moved its position. But the critics haven't moved an inch in their opposition. When it comes to the unions, we are actually perplexed about their position because they are calling for a fuel levy as a method of financing this project. But the unions should know better that the fuel levy is an anti-poor form of tax. Due to its indiscriminate nature, it will hit the working class and the poor. We would have thought that the unions would welcome the exemption of public transport because that is the preferred mode of transport by the poor and the working class.
What about punitive measures for those who refuse to pay? Are we still not going to be able to renew licenses? Is that going to be a key punitive measure going forward?
Well, the legal framework around that is still being developed by the Department of Transport. But we must accept that in a constitutional democracy where we all claim to uphold the rule of law, if we break the law, there has to be consequences. Now, there are some who say we are threatening people. They don't like the fact that there will be punitive measures. But, there will be total anarchy in society if those who break the law can do so willy-nilly without facing any consequences. So, yes, there will be consequences because people would basically be breaking the law. But as Sandral, I must state that we are engineers. You know, our interest or our mandate is really to build the roads. When it comes to law enforcement, we will assist those organs of state that are tasked with enforcing the law and ensuring that there is compliance.
You talk about developing and changing positions and so forth. Are you changing your position with regards to incorrect billing, people receiving bills of 25, 30,000 rands and so forth? Are you developing a position around meeting those people?
Well, first, let me put that in its proper context. Yes, there were administrative errors when the system started, as it would happen with any system, but they were not as pronounced as they were made out to be. Those who were registered with us would have given us proper details, their preferred way of communicating. We didn't have problems with those. The problem came with communicating with those who are outside our registration process, because there we had to rely on the innate system. And it is common knowledge in this country that the data that sits within that system is not up to date. It is somewhat corrupted. But the Department of Transport has taken steps to rectify that. There is legislation in place to the effect that by October this year, we must all, as motorist vehicle owners, we must all update our system, our data on e-NATIS.
And finally, so before I let you go, plans to extend this to other parts of the country. How's it looking at the moment?
Well, there is no plan to extend the open road tolling system to other parts of the country. We must make a distinction between tolling and e-tolling. E-tolling, as we practice it here in Gauteng, we are using the open tolling road system where there are no physical toll gates on the road. In other parts of the country, you still have your conventional plazas. What is likely to happen in other parts of the country is to simply introduce automated lanes while retaining manual lanes, so that if there are road users who value time and they don't want to waste time at the toll plaza paying manually, they can simply use the automated lanes, and they will use the electronic method of payment.
I thank you for joining us today. That's SANRAL spokesperson, Mr. Vusi Mona. Of course, new dispensation goes into effect here in South Africa today. But let's have a look at what's happening on the front pages around the world. We start in Israel. The Jerusalem Post there reports that Israel closed Nistana and Kerem Shalom border crossings yesterday following militants' attack in Egypt's North Sinai that killed at least 50 in one of the biggest coordinated assaults yet in the insurgency-hit province. We move to Florida. The Miami Herald says, casting aside more than half a century of hostilities, President Obama announced yesterday that the United States and Cuba would restore full diplomatic relations and open respective embassies on July the 20th. And in New York, the international New York Times says European leaders have been saying distinct and sometimes directly contradictory things about whether there's still a bailout deal on the table and whether they want Greece to hold its referendum. Let's take a quick look what's happening here in South Africa. We start in Johannesburg, where an application by PATCO to have a new bus operator take over staff who were affected by the cancelling of contracts is still expected to be heard by the Labour Court. PATCO Executive Director Tace Haynes said they were asking for the court to give guidance on the matter as 330 people were affected. Then, in the capital, Pretoria, the trial of former police crime intelligence unit senior official Solly Lazarus and his colleague Heini Barnard is expected to begin in the Magistrates Court. The two men are facing fraud and corruption charges. And in Durban, the woman who was allegedly involved in a syndicate and stole a baby a month ago is expected to appear in the Mpangeni Magistrates Court today. Now, we're going to break with a little bit of good news. Archbishop Emeritus Desmond Tutu and his wife Leah will mark their 60th wedding anniversary today by renewing their marriage vows at the St. George's Cathedral in Cape Town. The service will be followed by a luncheon in the Cape Town City Hall a fundraiser for the Desmond and Leah Tutu Legacy Foundation. On Saturday, the couple will also celebrate their anniversary during a Eucharist service at the Holy Cross Anglican Church here in Soweto, in Johannesburg, on the 2nd of July, 1955. Tutu married Nomalizo Leah Shangane, a teacher whom he had met while at college. What a lovely picture. Time for us to take a break. This is Newsroom on SABC News.
In Africa, mobile devices are tools to make payments, browse the internet, and keep governments in check with social media forums.
It's given an average African too much power in their hands.
And tech creativity is solving some of the continent's problems.
Everything is internet driven.
And on Network, we tell you how Africans are using technology and social media in their everyday lives.
Join Siphumelele Zondi on Network every Sunday at 19:30 CAT.
Welcome back. This is Newsroom here on SABC News. Now, to wrap up Youth Month, the Deputy Minister, Buti Manamela, will lead a youth delegation to the BRICS Youth Ministers meeting due to take place in Kazan, in the Russian Federation. That started yesterday, 1st of July. The meeting is aimed at promoting and developing exchanges and cooperation in youth affairs amongst the BRICS countries, which of course include Brazil, Russia, India, China, and then South Africa. South Africa's participation at the BRICS Youth Summit is aimed at finding ways of addressing the challenges of poverty, inequality and joblessness amongst the youth of not just South Africa, but the entire continent. Through this, South Africa seeks to take forward the National Development Plan, ideals and the National Youth Policy 2020 proposals for economic participation and the transformation of the lives of young people. Now, joining us today in studio to give us a preview on the Deputy Minister's trip is the President of the South African Youth Council, Mr. Thulani Tsefuta. Very good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, and good morning to the viewers.
Just give us a little update on the summit and the expectations of the summit.
Well, we are pleased to indicate that in 2013, when South Africa was chairing BRICS, in the Durban conference that was held in March in Durban, South Africa made a proposal that was agreed by all BRICS countries, and the proposal was that youth development must be a new area of cooperation that should be shared amongst all the BRICS countries, and that was agreed. And so the sitting of the first BRICS Youth Policy Dialogue this year in Kazan is the culmination of that commitment which was made by South Africa when it chaired BRICS. And basically, the Youth Summit is a parallel and a pre-event to the main BRICS meeting of the heads of states. So it will discuss a framework of areas of focus for youth development that will later be escalated to ministers of youth development and then the main meeting of BRICS youth heads of state.
Joblessness, inequality. This is a problem not just in South Africa for young people, but throughout the continent. How do we represent other African countries who are not part of this summit? How will their concerns, if as it were, be addressed at the summit?
Well, we think that as South Africa, we have sufficient basis to conclude that education and skills development, youth unemployment are the two biggest challenges that are even finding expression in the NDP, that we have too poor educational outcomes, and secondly, there are too few people who work. And to make matters worse, or to exacerbate the situation, Stats SA just released a report that indicates that youth unemployment has increased across the country in 8 provinces except Gauteng. And so we think that those two challenges do not need rocket science for us to come to a conclusion that for anyone who wants to collaborate with us, those two must be priority areas that the majority of BRICS countries are actually collaborating with us on. The South African delegation that is led by Deputy Minister into Kazan is taking few issues as the mandate. One is a focus on education and skills development with specific focus on science, technology and innovation. Secondly, youth employment efforts that focus on formal employment and youth entrepreneurship, and exchange programs that would be done amongst the BRICS countries.
The main issues that the Deputy President will be taking to the summit as concerns for South Africa, what are those?
The framework that guides the issues that the delegation is taking to Kazan are found in 3 pieces of documents. One, we use the African Youth Charter as a guiding framework. Secondly, we use the newly adopted National Youth Policy of South Africa as the second guiding framework. And thirdly, we use the Youth Employment Accord as a framework that guides the mandate. And if I can just list those issues. One, they focus on education and skills development, youth employment, youth entrepreneurship, and social cohesion and nation building.
Implementation is always the key. How do we bring back the discussions and the solutions that's put forward at the summit and implement them here in South Africa?
The first thing that we proposed to the Deputy Minister and the delegation that he leads as the South African Youth Council is that, one, we must have a continuous program in South Africa that educates young people about BRICS and the opportunities that it holds for young people. Secondly, we should not go looking for new ideas. We should start by looking into the agreements that are already in place and see, out of those, what opportunities can we extrapolate and leverage for the benefit of young people. For an example, we know that there is a BRICS Development Bank that is in place, and our call is that there should be a dedicated youth funding facility that will be established in BRICS, which will go a long way in supporting the aspirations of young entrepreneurs within South Africa and the BRICS. And thirdly, we believe that there has to be a dedicated youth sector secretariat that will focus on following up in all the agreements that emanate from BRICS.
What are the mutual or the concerns that young people, the one thing that stands out in all these countries that young people face? What is their major concerns in all 5 countries?
Youth unemployment.
Youth unemployment. In South Africa, we have one segment of the youth that's never really under discussion, and that's homeless youth. We have a lot of homeless young people in South Africa that often seems to be left on the outside. How are we going to bring homeless young people into the fold?
We actually firmly believe that with the situation of a youth bulge in South Africa, we are presented with 2 things. The first thing that we are presented with is opportunities, and those opportunities will only draw benefit if we invest in the lives of young people and thereby enable them to be active economic citizens later on in their lives. It will mean they will cease to depend on free healthcare, free housing, social security grants and all those, because they shall have been empowered to be active economic citizens. But the youth bulge also presents us with a threat in the case where we leave some young people to fall in between the cracks, like you have just mentioned, homeless young people. And we actually are driving a message as the South African Youth Council to both government and the private sector and the entirety of society that youth bulge will get us to a stage where young people are no longer pleased with being quoted as a mere issue of statistics, that young people are the majority of those who are unemployed, majority of the population of South Africa, it will get to a point where young people say, share with us on the resources, or we will share our poverty with you.
Activism amongst young people. In the social media age, one often gets the idea that young people are not as active politically as maybe our generation was. Do you share that view, and how do we change it if that is the case?
There's a lot of youth activism going around in South Africa. What we can confirm, though, is that it has shifted from being political activism only. As a result of democracy, young people today were able to express our youthfulness through politics, sports, arts, culture, recreation. And by the way, the majority of young people today are organized in faith-based organizations more than any other sector of community activism. And what matters the most is we should not seek to channel young people from what they are already active in into that which we believe they should be active in. But we must seek to reach them where they are in the platforms and in the channels that they use the most in their daily lives.
Well, thank you for coming in today and telling us about the BRICS Youth Council, the BRICS Youth Summit that's ongoing in Kazan, Russia. Started yesterday. Deputy Minister in the presidency, of course, Buti Manamela, is there to connect South Africa's youth challenges with that of the rest of the rest of the BRICS countries. Thank you for joining us today. That's Tulani Chefuta, who's the president of the South African Youth Council, talking about the BRICS Youth Summit. Now, Ismail Vadi, the Gauteng Transport MEC, is expected today to shed light on reasons why the Public Utility Transport Corporation, PUTCO, has terminated its services on several routes in the province. Here are some of your views about this on social media. At SABC Newsroom is where you can send it to us. It's day 2 in Mamelodi of a PUTCO Autotext situation. There's more police vans this morning to try and control the situation, says Peter Kotlolo. I'm an African, says government failure to provide reliable transport has allowed taxi mafias to think they own the passengers. That is a very insightful comment. Polelo Masola says, Mamelodi PUTCO bus taxi owners must just stop being bullies. It's as simple as that. Now, Miss Shays says the PUTCO bus situation is really sad. Wonder how many people are going to be stranded. Really hope a plan is made soon. I foresee disaster. Ndukulo Wachopi says taxis are expensive and unreliable. That is at the heart of the matter, say the most important people, who are the commuters themselves. We'll try and get the Santaco Association in either tomorrow or Monday to talk about this situation in a free market economy. Can you go to the service provider and tell them, we must get this contract? What are your views? At SABC Newsroom, that's where you can send it to us. Let's take a look now at what's on Newsroom's Facebook page. Of course, a 1-month-old baby has been reunited with his mother after a suspected syndicate allegedly operating in the KwaZulu-Natal North Coast abducted him last month. Then, Libya's internationally recognized Prime Minister said he hoped to reach a power-sharing peace agreement today with his rivals during UN-backed talks to end a conflict that threatens to break up the North African country. And European shares extended gains yesterday after a report that Greece was ready to accept most conditions from its international creditors to clinch a debt deal. For more news updates, follow our Facebook page. Just in the search bar at the top, you type in SABC Newsroom, it pops up and it gives you, well, all the stuff that we do on the show and on this channel. Let's now take a short break. You're watching Newsroom here on SABC News.
Welcome back. You're watching Newsroom on SABC News. Let's take a look at the stories making headlines today. The CEO of the Autotext bus service is expected to visit Mamelodi east of Pretoria today. This as commuters in the area were left stranded for a second day. Taxi operators continue to prevent Autotext buses from taking over routes previously occupied by Putco. Buses were earlier stoned as they were prevented from ferrying commuters. A strong police presence helped bring the situation under control. The South African Revenue Service says its target for 2015 is 1.1 trillion rand. According to its records, nearly 30,000 taxpayers have submitted their returns through e-filing since the start of the season at midnight. At least 7,300 others have visited SARS branches and mobile tax units throughout the country. And as tensions continue to rise in Burundi, parliamentary poll results are expected to be released today. It's been reported that at least 6 people were killed in the country's capital yesterday. This was the latest violent clash between police and residents since Monday's election. Well, remember, you can find all of those stories on our Newsroom Facebook page. Just search for Newsroom. You can also follow us on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Kevin, back to you.
Thank you very much, Janine. The 2015 National Arts Festival, Africa's largest and most colourful cultural event, kicks off in Grahamstown today and will go up until the 12th of July. People around the country will flock to the small Eastern Cape town for a feast of arts, crafts and sheer entertainment. Every hall or large room becomes a theatre, parks and sports field become flea markets throughout the whole town. It becomes a real buzz of activities. This year's festival will also offer more than 500 shows from opera, cabaret, drama and jazz to stand-up comics and even folk music. The spotlight for this year's festival is satire. Esteemed satirist Peter Dirk Uys, who is popularly known for his character or alter ego, Evita Besaidnout, will be honoured there today. Well, he was supposed to join us today, but our reporter Lerato Tipa is with a guest, someone else this morning. Unfortunately, Peter Dirk Uys couldn't join us. Very good morning to you, Lerato. Thanks for joining us. Just quickly set the scene for us.
I'll just slowly do it.
Well, a very good morning and to the Grahamstown National Arts Festival taking place in Grahamstown. It is the 41st anniversary of this festival, and despite the concerns of load shedding, it is all system go, and organisers are saying that the party will definitely go on. Well, the theme for this year's festival is really satire and comedy, and earlier this morning we had dancers really showcasing the different genres of dance that are happening at this festival. Now, a man who knows all about satire and all about drama and comedy is one of the world-renowned directors. His name is Rob Murray, and he's my guest this morning. Good morning, Rob.
Good morning, Loretta. Thank you very much.
Can you just tell us briefly, where did the love for performing arts, specifically directing, where did that start?
I think it started at a very young age. I've always been so fascinated in stories and particularly human relationships. And theatre is such a beautiful way to express that. It's so immediate and you can connect with an audience straight away. And it's so powerful. It can really make you question things and it can really change your life. It certainly changed mine.
Now, what role do you think as an artist that arts plays in addressing some of the social ills in society?
I think it's absolutely vital that arts keep prodding and asking questions and things like that, even though for satirists and for comedians, very often the government does a wonderful job for us. You know, that so much drama plays out there anyway. But the artistic sort of reflection of things that are happening in society is really, really, really important. It keeps us developing as a nation, and laughter or drama, tragedy, it brings us together as a shared community, and it shows us that things don't have to be the way they are, that things can change.
Now, you've been here for over 12 years directing so many plays. What do you think has been the key success to the sustainability of this festival throughout these years?
The festival gives a platform for innovative and independent entrepreneurs of the arts. As a national festival, its profile is really big. It's one of the biggest arts festivals in the world. And it attracts attention not only from the major centres, from Johannesburg, Cape Town, Durban, Bloem, which gives a wonderful showcase for people's work that wouldn't otherwise necessarily be seen. So it can lead to many bigger things. It's also grown quite exponentially on the international stage, so we get a lot of international producers coming here, and a lot of work has a long life and starts to travel around the world and keeps building the South African brand.
Now, one of the international acts who's going to be honoured this year is Peter Dirk Ace. What contribution do you think he has made in putting arts in the map both nationally and internationally?
Peter's just amazing. He's such a warm and lovely and caring individual and human, and it's so glad to see him recognized by the festival this year. He's just his perseverance, I think, and despite everything, despite all the challenges, he's just kept prodding away with such humanity, such comedy, and such a lovely way of reflecting the way that he would like to see things. And that's an inspiration to generations of theatre makers and satirists who have come up since he's been here. Yeah.
Now, the Eastern Cape is the hub of cultural and arts activities, and the likes of John Kani, Ethel Chollop have come from this province. But do you think enough is being done at a grassroots level to develop arts in this region?
I think there are a lot of really good initiatives that are happening. Of course, more could be made the whole time, but I think also it's really up to the artists, the performers. Nothing's going to be handed to us on a platter. We've got to stand up and do it for ourselves. And this is where the National Arts Festival comes in, because they've really invested in the local community. The group that I'm working with at the moment from the local township, we're doing a show called Waterline, and the National Arts Festival have been behind that, and with the project Creative Cities Grahamstown, which is also in partnership with the European Union, really to showcase local talent and to take it beyond just the local region, take it nationally, and who knows, maybe even internationally.
Now, you are directing 2 plays at this year's festival. Can you tell us briefly about what these plays are going to be all about?
Absolutely. Waterline is our brand new piece featuring local artists, and it's a combination of contemporary mask work, which is silent, and also this really interesting blend of community and protest theatre, all in one satirical package, which deals with the very real water issues that happen here in the Makana district. And of course, we take artistic license and build a story up around that, but it's this prod at what's going on, as well as a lot of comedy and tragedy. The other show, Pizza Optel Goed, is a look at a woman's sort of abuse at the hands of society and revenge that she takes out on it. It's a dark and quite brooding piece that premiered last year and won the Silver Standard Bank Ovation Award, and will be going to the Amsterdam Fringe Festival in September.
Thank you so much. That was a leading director at the National Arts Festival, Rob Morais, saying that despite the success of the festival now in its 41st year, there's still so much that can be done to develop arts and craft at a grassroots level. It's back to you in studio.
Thanks, Loretta. It should be a fun 2 weeks there. I hope you guys enjoy it. They get to have all the fun out in the field. Some of us have to really work here every day in the studio. Yes, that's the biggest annual theatre festival, the Grahamstown Art Festival on the African continent. That's what they say. At least it starts today. There will be performers from all over the continent to get on stage there and do their stuff. Let's have a final look at what you guys are saying around the Arts Festival. Noah Webby says, feeling so much full moon now that has begun. Hilton Arts en route to National Arts Festival 2015, the greatest fortnight of the year. Super excited. Here's a beautiful picture. Michelle Couto says, day 1 of 11, amazing days. Good morning, Grahamstown. And there you have a wonderful panoramic of the small Eastern Cape town where it will all be happening. There's another evening shot there of Grahamstown. Tony Lancaster says, Festival Sunrise. National Arts Festival. Is that sunrise? Wonderful picture. Looks almost like a sunset. Really beautiful. Yes, the small town of Grahamstown will be where it will be at for the next 11 days. Until July the 12th, the National Arts Festival will be taking place there. If you haven't booked, probably too late to go there now. That's where we wrap it. Newsroom is broadcast live from our studios here in Auckland Park, Johannesburg. Every weekday morning between 9 and 10 a.m. We also stream live on YouTube at that time, but the whole show is always available on demand on our YouTube channel. Don't forget, this is SABC News. You've been watching Newsroom. We love it in the morning.